Hello everyone, welcome to my table, and today we are talking about a mobile game series, and one I'm actually quite fond of, Cookie Run. I mainly play Cookie Run Kingdom, but once I have more time in the future I plan to play Oven Break, even though for this video I have looked up story aspects of these games. This has been my biggest D&D project to date, taking me just over 4 months to complete just a PDF because of real life events. You can get the full PDF on my Patreon with all of the formatting, art, and all of the little extras you won't get from this video. I swear at this point, Dev Sisters or Wizards should just hire me at this point. But with that, we shall begin. Ladies and gentle cookies, welcome to Earthbread. My recommendation as a DM would be having Earthbread be a separate plane, like the Feywild, if you wish to add it to your ongoing game world. If not, just use it to replace the material plane. In the first few pages are just the cover page, title page, disclaimer page, explaining that I'm not affiliated with Dev Sisters, and that I may get some lore aspects wrong. The reason for this is as far as I could find, there has been no solid timeline for the entirety of the Cookie Run universe, so I took aspects from both Oven Break and Kingdom, and I have tried my best to keep the story and aspects as close as possible to the original source material. Overall, however, this homebrew is based mostly on the Kingdom game. As well, this homebrew stopped being written or was mostly finished and wasn't added to aside from art and spelling checks a week or two after the Council of Heroes update came out, so nothing from that or afterwards will be in this homebrew. Now let's get into the homebrew. We will begin with character options. Firstly, races. The first race we have is, of course, cookies. Cookies are a highly intelligent species that are nearly indistinguishable from humans, aside from their makeup and appearance. Their diversity, motivations, and capabilities are very similar to those of humans in a modern fantasy setting, seeking community and fulfillment despite their original purpose being much less complex. The traits show this. As a cookie, your dexterity is increased by 2, your size is tiny, and you have a walking speed of 20 feet because you are so small. Cookie alignments are varied, but most tend to be born with good intentions, being mostly of good or neutral alignments. This part of lore was really hard for me, and that is age, because by God does Dev Sisters try to make this confusing. Because cookies can be born like normal, or they can be baked like how Gingerbrave was. Not only that, they can be born or baked at a certain age. For example, Gingerbrave was baked and was able to walk, talk, and most importantly run, at least being 8 years old mentally as soon as he gained consciousness, while other cookies are born like babies and they have to mature accordingly. The wikis were no help, having to go through the joke descriptions like saying Gingerbrave was baked by Henry freaking Ford. Another example is Cotton Cookie, who shows that they physically age in their cutscenes over time, and they never give us actually how many years have passed, but apparently it was long enough for a legend to surround her and her story, but she is somehow still alive. Then other cookies just don't age at all or age very slowly, like the ancient cookies, which I suspect is from their soul jam, which is a whole nother topic. So by looking through the evidence, I assume cookies tend to age very slowly and have lifespans that can cause their own legends to follow them. So I theorized that with proper care, cookies can live thousands of years. Now after that headache, we have abilities you have by taking this race. There are of course downsides as well as bonuses. Aside from the 2 languages you learn, you gain 3 abilities before picking your sub-race. The ability Crispy and Tricky states that cookies are small and hard to hit, not to mention tough. Every cookie gets a +1 to their armor class through natural armor. The next ability, Soggy Cookies, is a detriment, but also has to do with the original story of Oven Break. We learned that cookies get soggy if they're in water for too long, and the same thing happens in Cookie Run Kingdom in the Soda Islands game mode. This ability states that if a cookie is in water for more than 30 seconds, they will lose their natural armor for 1 hour for each 30 seconds they spend in water after the first. This can make the first ability a bit more balanced because it can be removed with the right weapons or spells. The last ability before you choose your sub-races is Naturally Stealthy, which allows you to hide more easily if you are hiding behind a creature of a bigger size class than you. If you are playing a cookie outside the Earthbread world with full-size humans and other creatures, you can easily hide behind allies or even your own mounts. Now we move on to sub-races. Cookies have 8 sub-races: Charge, Defense, Ambush, Magic, Bomber, Healing, Ranged, and Support, or the classes in the Cookie Run Kingdom game. Each of these sub-races have something special about them and will give you extra bonuses added to your normal race traits. Each sub-race gains 2 abilities and their ability score improvement respectively. Charge cookies gain a +1 to their strength and gain 2 abilities, Upfront Combat and Battle Rush. Upfront Combat makes it so that if in a battle, if you are the first one to take damage, you can make an attack against the person who attacked you as long as they are within melee range. A bonk for a bonk, per se. Battle Rush is a combat-focused ability, making it so that at the beginning of combat, you can take a second movement action to get within range of an opponent. For example, your cookie is 30 feet away from an enemy wizard at the beginning of combat. You could take your movement action to get 20 feet closer, and then use your race ability to move an extra 10 feet to get within melee range. Come here, boy! Defense cookies gain a boost to their constitution because they need to be able to take a hit on the front lines. They also gain abilities Protection Proficiency and Protect the Front. Protection Proficiency makes it so the cookie is proficient in medium and heavy armor, and Protecting the Front allows you to take a critical hit for an ally, which can be used to stop another player from getting downed. Con helps with that, giving you some extra HP to absorb the attack. Next are Ambush cookies that give you an extra point in Dex, so that means you get a +3 in Dex. But with this, it causes the abilities not to be as powerful. I'm a natural and 2 of a kind. I'm a natural just makes it so you cannot roll lower than a 5 on stealth rolls, and 2 of a kind makes it so that you can use your bonus action to throw a throwable weapon once each day. Bomber cookies gain a boost in their charisma, and they would do best with a magical class having to do with spells and splash damage. Their abilities, Excess Power and Bombastic, both have to do with powering up those kinds of spells, making them fairly strong spellcasters. Excess Power makes it so when you cast a spell or use an ability that causes area of effect damage, such as Fireball or Fog Cloud, they will do damage for an extra 10 feet. Then Bombastic says once per day when you cast a spell or use an ability that causes area of effect damage, you may allow it to do an extra 2d6 damage of the spell's type. However, once you do this, the next spell you cast that does damage in the next 24 hours will have the same amount of damage removed from the damage total. Cue the boom 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 song. This also means if you cast something like Magic Missile, if your spell does less than 2d6 damage, you'll end up doing nothing. Magic cookies also are prone to magic, if you couldn't tell by the name. These cookies gain a boost in their intelligence and gain 2 abilities, Innate Magic and Push Your Potential. Innate Magic allows the character to gain an extra cantrip from the Wizard, Artificer, Druid, or Sorcerer's spell list to learn permanently, while Push Your Potential makes it so you gain a spell slot under 5th level, but in exchange, they will take a level of exhaustion. So this is like a last resort if you really need a spell slot of your highest level spell slot, or a specific spell is very much needed. Healing cookies give you a boost to your wisdom, and you have the Gift of Giving and the For You abilities. The Gift of Giving allows you to heal yourself when you heal others. Feels good to be a good person, huh? Their For You ability is a bit more complicated. If any allies are within 90 feet of you and are on 0 hit points or are making death saves, you can make a risk on your life to allow them to survive. Once per long rest, as long as you don't have any exhaustion levels, you may give your ally a bonus to their rolls. You can choose to take a level of exhaustion for each point you add to their death saving throw. You can do this after the roll is made but before they take a missed saving throw. As an example, you may take a level of exhaustion to add a 1 to an ally's death saving throw, turning a 9 to a 10, thus making the roll a success. The ability is great for saving an ally in dire need, just be careful because exhaustion can also kill you. Range Cookie also gain a boost to their wisdom and gain the abilities Distance Proficiency and Eye on Target. Distance Proficiency gives you proficiency in simple and martial ranged weapons. Eye on Target makes it so you have a bonus to your attack if your target is more than 30 feet away from you. Lastly, Support Cookies. Support Cookies are variant humans of cookies, making them some of the most versatile, but they don't get as good as a bonus. They can gain a bonus to the ability score of your choice, or they can take a feat, getting rid of the rest of your ability score improvements. So that would mean you wouldn't have your cookie race +2 and the sub race is +1. You could take a feat instead. With the abilities Wildly Proficient and Seen Much, they can be fairly versatile. Wildly Proficient allows you to take proficiency in 1 skill and 1 weapon of the player's choosing, and Seen Much makes it so that you cannot be frightened. There are some alternative cookie aspects, but you can find those in the full PDF. For things like cyborg cookies or dragon cookies. Up next is another race, the cake cookie race. Now the reason I made this is because I really wanted to make something special for Red Velvet Cookie, because they have always been on my team, and they are a very special individual. There are no other cookies in canon that I am aware of that look like Red Velvet, and I feel like I could be making something special and interesting with this race. So I tried to build a bit more of the lore for it, and maybe it could be something Dev Sisters can pick up on, and possibly add to their game. I would just like credit, please. I made it so that if you pick this race, your character gains heterochromia, or 2 differently colored eyes, like how Red Velvet Cookie has, or how my avatar has. These cookies aren't born with their cake parts, but are usually given a cake part by a powerful mage as a gift, as a last resort to keep a person alive, or given by a nature spirit as a lesson to the person whom it has been attached to. There are many ways to become a cake cookie, but very few are pleasant, so I enjoy that edgy backstory, you nerds. Cake cookies gain a +2 to the charisma score and age similarly to cookies. If you want to hear my age rant again, go back like 3 or 5 minutes. Cake cookies are often looked down upon. Because of this, they tend to lean towards lawful alignments, because having order usually means that they can gain respect of those around them, or at least people wouldn't be brash enough to confront them in public about their cake parts. Your size is tiny, just like the normal cookies, and your speed is 20 feet. Now for the abilities, which are very good for this race, because there are no sub-races, but what you do have is dichotomy. Dichotomy is what makes your cake cookie your cake cookie. When you make your cake cookie, you get to choose your cake fusions. Cake fusions can go from replacement limbs to adding special abilities, and you could choose one when you make your cookie, and your cookie evolves and gains another at 10th level. Cake fusions act like the race features, and you have quite the number to choose from. Cake arm makes it like red velvet. You can wield two-handed weapons with your one cake arm, you gain reach, and you gain a claw attack. You can also gain a cake eye, which gives you a stronger dark vision, a photographic memory, and you gain a special membrane that allows you to see 20 feet in magical darkness, and you cannot be blinded. Then the ones that require you to be 10th level are even stronger because you yourself have gotten stronger. You can gain cake wings, and that give you a fly speed, you can have a gust attack, and you can ram into people while you're flying. While Arcane Frosting allows you to cast counterspell, you get a bonus to your concentration when concentrating on a spell, and you could store a spell in your frosting. These aspects cannot be changed once you pick them, so make sure you think long and hard about it. With the cookie cake race, you also gain a few other abilities. The trait I'm Like You gives you a bonus perception and animal handling checks against cakes, and you gain dark vision out to 60 feet. You also gain one special thing because of the race that comes after the next race we talk about. That race being sugar gnomes. These funny little creatures I actually had a lot of fun making to the race, and I used some of them for the promotional stuff on Twitter that seemed to get a little attention. To get everything I need, I actually watched through all the gnomed shorts Cookie Run has produced, and I actually found a new respect for them as I looked through the lore and personalities. Sugar gnomes gain a boost to their intelligence, and are tiny, and have a movement speed of 20 feet. They grow out of the ground, and come out fully grown. Because of this, there is no solid aging system for these creatures. However, because they can wait in between kingdoms being built, like how they did at the beginning of the Cookie Run story, I assume they can live much longer than cookies, maybe even forever if not killed. Because they're natural pranksters, I almost wanted to say that they are chaotic nature, but all sugar gnomes seen in game and on screen are all good-natured, and wouldn't want any of their pranks to go too far. Also, because they work in such delicate work, there must be some order in there, unless they're breaking building codes that I'm not aware of. So I decided to say they're usually on the good spectrum. Also, if you haven't watched the Gnome shorts, I suggest you do so. I actually became a much bigger fan of Dark Chocolate Cookie through them. Just like any other race, you have your own weaknesses and strengths. One weakness is so great that I had to put it in the homebrew is the Sugar Gnome's weakness to milk. If you are fully encased in milk for more than 10 seconds, Sugar Gnomes will die. They will melt. It is common knowledge that most Sugar Gnomes melt slightly when they get too stressed, but they seem to be able to recover from it rather quickly, so I don't think it really should count as a weakness. However, Sugar Gnomes are petrified of milk. Just being near the vicinity will cause them to start melting from the stress. They mentioned it can cause them to melt completely, so I felt like it would make a good weakness. With the milk weakness, they also have some strengths. They come out ready to work, gaining their crafty and get to work race traits. You also gain proficiency in the sleight of hand and history skills because you had to learn how to build, and you gain proficiency in light and heavy hammers. Because Sugar Gnomes are shown wielding and using hammers smaller or bigger than their body size, so you can whack it to your heart's content. Lastly, for races, we have the Cake Werehounds. This race is something I wanted to add for a while, and near the end, I decided to add it. These guys get a bonus to their strength. They can come from almost any alignment, and they are the small size class, not tiny. The reason for this is that any Cake Werehound that we have seen is much bigger than a cookie, so I thought gaining a size class would make sense. With this, their walking speed is 25 feet. I also had to guess the age for these creatures, so I put them around the same aging range as cookies. The benefits of this race is linked back to the Werehound heritage, because technically your character would be a canine, closely related to the Cakehounds. You gain the Canine Senses ability, which gives Werehounds advantage on perception checks that require hearing or smell. You gain claws as natural weapons, and you gain the ability Hello, Fellow Dog. This ability gives an advantage on animal handling checks because you're also technically an animal. Lastly, you gain the Howl ability, where once per long rest, you can howl loudly to attempt to make a charisma or intimidation check with advantage to all creatures of your choice who can hear you. If they fail to roll, they have a disadvantage on the attack rolls against you and those within 10 feet of you until the end of your next turn, and on a pass, they are unaffected. Now for the thing I mentioned back at the cake cookie section. Because the cakes are so-called werehounds, I would like to think you could become a werehound like how you would become a werewolf. That is why cake cookies cannot be targets of lycanthropy, because being part cake, they are already part beast. If your DM chooses to follow this rule, your character would become a werehound lycanthrope. So let me just get this completely straight for you. Cake cookies cannot become lycanthropes. They are immune to it. But other cookies can become a werehound lycanthrope, meaning you could transform into a werehound. While doing so, you lose 4 intelligence score and +2 to your strength score to the max of 20, but not to worry, these stats return to normal when you return to your normal form. At first, when you gain this, you have no control over it, which can cause a rampage, but with training, you can gain full control over your werehound form, which includes when you transform. However, to balance this, you cannot transform again for 1 day times the number of hours you were in that form. For example, if you were in the werehound form for 6 hours, you cannot transform again for another 6 days. And if you were in the form for only the minimal hour, you only have to wait 24 hours to transform again. Now that we are done with the races, we can now move on to the subclasses. Each of these subclasses have something to do with the Cookie Run lore, for both Oven Break and Kingdom. I was able to make subclasses for most of the classes, but there are 1 or 2 I couldn't think of one. And we will start with the Artificer, and one of my favorite cookies right behind Black Raisin, Croissant Cookie, and the TBD or Time Balance Department Agent subclass. Now this in itself was a challenge not to make overpowered because time travel is really strong. Like, heck, an ability to pause time is a 9th level spell. So I worked around the lore of the TBD to make a class that is worth using without being overpowered. To begin with, you gain proficiency with the History skill and Smith's tools. And if you already have proficiency with one or both of them, you gain proficiency in a skill or tool of your choice. And you gain access to some extra spells from both the spells that come later in the Homebrew and other spells you wouldn't normally have access to. When you take the subclass at 3rd level, you gain the Timeline Mender class ability. It makes it so, as an action, you can use your timeline goggles to peer into the near future and help you and your allies. You roll a D100. On a 51 or more, you can choose to either have an enemy have disadvantage on an attack to hit you during your next turn, or you gain advantage on an attack against them during your next turn, since you now know their movements. On 50 or below, you do not gain those advantages because you accidentally peered into the wrong timeline. Note, the reason there is a chance of failure is because, come on, you're a new agent. You're still learning about the gear and what it does. You can't expect someone who has never played Magic the Gathering before to be able to judge a tournament. However, getting advantage on an attack, or an opponent getting disadvantage to attack on you, are very good abilities. At 5th level, you gain the Upcoming Agent title, and you gain some bonuses with your promotion. Your chance of success with your Timeline Mender ability grows by an extra 10 points, making it more likely to succeed. You can also now give your ally the Timeline Mender ability, but it has a much harder roll to pull off a successful use of the ability. You also gain some smaller abilities. You'd like a gain to your movement speed and a +3 to your dexterity saving throws. You'll, however, also gain a time modification device of your own making, which can be like a wrench, a watch, or even make it your weapon. By having this device, however, you can focus really hard and can teleport within a mile of where you are as long as you know where you're going. At 9th level, you become an upper class agent, making you more powerful and giving you access to some of the stronger powers of a TBD operative. You can now sense rift in space-time, including portals to other planes and timelines. Your goggles now gain 5 charges, which refill completely after a long rest. These charges can be used to find planar or time rift portals within 5 miles. Using another charge, you can close them if they are within a mile. Doing so will cause those within 15 feet of the portal or rift to be sucked back in and take 8d6 force damage as they land back where they came from. By closing the portal, you know who casted or made the portal, who entered or exited. Basically, you know where they went if they are on the same plane as you are. You may also use one of the charges as an action to open a small portal in space-time that you can jump into to end up somewhere else. When you jump into this portal, choose somewhere within 60 feet of you, and the portal will spit you out there. If there is a creature within 5 feet of you when you come out, they must make an intelligence saving throw. If they fail, they are so confused by what just happened that they cannot attack you during their next turn. Yeetus deletus from my portalis! At 15th level, you have become a Master Class Agent. Make it so you don't have to roll to gain the bonuses of your Timeline Mender ability. They just always succeed when you choose to use them, as well as you can cause both options to happen. That being, you gain advantage on an attack, and they gain disadvantage on an attack against you. As well, your portal ability from the 9th level ability gains more range. Then, once per week, you can teleport to the Time Balance Department and the city around it. There, you can gain emergency care if need be, so this ability can be really helpful in a pinch. However, you'll be teleported back where you were automatically after 24 hours, and if you return earlier, you can choose where you want to return to as long as you're familiar with the location. Up next is the Barbarian Subclass. This one is based on Mala Sauce and Purple Yam Cookie. I bring you the primal path of heat. Bring the fire. While you are raging, your weapon is engulfed in flames, dealing extra fire damage. This fire damage will grow as you level up. Then, once you get to 6th level, you gain more control over the heat you give off, and you can condense it. When you enter a rage, any creature of your choice within 10 feet of you must make a DC 14 dexterity saving throw or be caught in the heat wave. If failed, they will take 2d6 fire damage and be pushed back 10 feet as a burst of hot air pushes them back. On a success, they will take half damage and not be pushed back. The damage and pushback will increase by 1d6 and 5 feet at 10th level, 14th level, and 18th level. As you can tell, this class gains a lot of bonuses as you level up. I really wanted to give you the feeling of growing power. At 10th level, you gain the Consuming Inferno class feature. You are now immune to fire damage, and you can now bring fire bubbling to the surface. While raging, you could summon magma by slamming your weapon into the ground. From where you slam your weapon in a 5 foot by 30 foot cone, magma bursts upwards from the ground and stays there until you end your rage. Any person within 5 feet of the cone must make a DC 17 saving throw or take 2d12 fire damage, or half as much on a success. Any creature who walks through the magma or ends their turn on it will take 1d10 fire damage at the beginning of their turn until they leave said area. Never underestimate the firepower of a raging hot barbarian. Now lastly, at 14th level, once per long rest, by choosing to forgo your Heated Presence ability, you can condense that internal heat and let it out in one single large blow. You make a melee weapon attack against a creature, and upon a hit, where it makes contact with the target, a 7th level fireball spell will go off. You and others of your choice are immune to this damage, and there is no saving throw to avoid the attack for the main target. Others in the area of the fireball will follow the same rules for the spell. We will be skipping the Bard subclass because I could not think of a Bard subclass. I know there is DJ Cookie and Menchaca Cookie, but an issue is a DJ would probably be an Artificer subclass because I know DJing requires special technical equipment. I know this because my older brother is a popular DJ, and I've had to carry his heavy equipment before. I also was a security once or twice. Then Menchaca is just a violinist, and I have to admit a violinist could make a good subclass, but it's just way too specific, and I have no idea how I could anchor that into the Cookie Run lore. We will then head to the Cleric subclass, the Saint Pastry domain. Like a rolling pin flattening the many layers of pastry dough into uniformity, hardships and suffering produce the endurance to conquer the temptations of our crumbly bodies and souls. The halls of the Saint Pastry Order is full of calm clerics, veils, and the secrets no one fully understands. Praying to the witches with their holy forks in hand, they push forth to purge the unclean and those of cake monster kind. Now to get things in the class straight, you guys are gonna need context for one of the spells. There's a spell in the spell list called Fork of Judgment, which is a spell based off the weapon of the Saint Pastry Order and what Pastry Cookie used against Red Velvet. In short, Fork of Judgment is a first level spell for clerics that costs an action and lasts for a full minute without concentration. It makes it so that your attacks with your weapon deal 1d6 radiant damage, and you gain 1d6 for each spell level above the first. It's important because this spell is mentioned in the class quite a bit because it is attuned for the lore of the class. Like most Cleric subclasses, you gain bonus proficiencies in light armor, a simple weapon, and a martial range weapon of your choice. You also gain proficiency in the survival skill. As well as the first level, you gain the Holy Fork in Hand ability, which allows that anytime you cast Fork of Judgment spell, you may also heal an ally of your choice for 30 feet for how much damage you did to the target that is hit by the weapon imbued by your spell. The range grows by 30 feet at 6th, 8th, and 17th level. Then at 2nd level, you gain your Channel Divinity feature, which is titled Reduced to Crumbs. It basically allows you to add radiant damage to your allies' weapons, imbuing them with power of the Order. At 6th level, you gain the For the Truth ability, which allows you to be a bit more smart. While making any intelligence check, you may add your spellcasting modifier to the roll. Then, when you hit 8th level, you gain the Have Faith and Be Reborn ability. Once per long rest, you can cast Revivify, Greater Restoration, Aura of Life, or Guardians of Faith once per day without using a spell slot. Now, that is fairly strong, but That is because, so far, every ability has been fairly weak, or had to do with a singular spell, so I wanted to give the character a bit more when it came to their options. Then at 17th level, you become a Shadow Sister, or Shadow Brother depending, based on the Shadow Sisters in the lore who have known the truth about the cookies and work under the Mother. The text goes as follows. You have learned the secrets of the Order and have been elevated above all but the Reverend Mother. You now guard these secrets as well as being one of the highest powered clerics in the Order, if your mind can handle the truth. You have advantage on any intelligence saving throw and cannot be frightened. Once per day when you cast Fork of Judgment, you roll twice for the damage and take the highest roll. Now, think of this. A cleric at 17th level casts a 9th level spell. That means if they casted the 9th level spell, that is 18d6 of 108 guaranteed damage. This can lower a dragon's health by a little less than half, but that also requires your highest level spell slot and a once per day use. So it's a bit more balanced, but it is sure as heck a strong ability. Up next is the Druid subclass, which is honestly one of my favorites. The subclass is the Circle of the Millennial Tree, based on the lore of the Cookie Run Oven Break game. Druids of the Circle of the Millennial Tree find peace in nature, and wear antlers and golden bands on each of their limbs. They call upon spirituality of nature, calling spirits and the voice of nature itself to give them guidance. Those of the Circle of the Millennial Tree always preferred a peaceful option if available, and prefer to talk things out, for the quiet of the forest is the true thing that all beings strive for. To beat the darkness consuming the world, and to bring peace to everything is their goal. At 2nd level you gain some extra spells, your Arcane Harmony, and the Tree Shape ability. You also gain the Friends Cantrip. Then you gain Arcane Harmony, which gives you light-based animals that form around you. These creatures can be the form of butterflies, boars, cats, or a few other small animals. These creatures disappear if they are more than 30 feet away from you, and you can see through their eyes. While looking through their eyes, you cannot see, but you can move and speak. These creatures also cannot attack or take actions. They are forms of light, not anything physical. As well, these creatures can be used to phase your form out or hide it. Anyone attacking you within melee range while you are surrounded by these light creatures take a -1 penalty. After an attack is made against you, you cannot call forth these creatures again until after combat ends. Then comes Tree Shape. This ability allows you to make a choice when you enter Wild Shape. The first ability allows you to Wild Shape normally, but while doing so you get a bit of wood armor, raising your Wild Shape's AC. Just imagine a squirrel covered in wooden armor. It makes me smile. The second ability is it so instead of wild shaping, you can use a charge of your wild shape to give off an aura of the tree. Each creature within 30 feet of you grows bark-like layers above their skin or armor. This does not affect the unarmored defense feature, giving them a +1 to their armor class. This bonus is raised to +2 and the radius grows by 60 feet at 10th level. This bonus ends when they exit your aura. Also, since you can wild shape here, I should let you know, you can also wild shape in the cake beast from the bestiary of this PDF. At 6th level, you also gain the flesh and blood of the class, the Roots of Progress. As an action, you can make your limbs into those made of wood, looking like wooden tentacles. These roots are fully under your control and grow 15 feet long, giving you advantage on grapple checks when you use them. These roots have an AC of 16 and have 10 HP. When their HP reaches 0, they will retract and your limb will return to normal, undamaged. This root has a slam attack, and your attack bonus is your proficiency bonus plus your druid level, rounded down, doing 1d10 bludgeoning damage, and can constrict attack when you have a creature grappled, doing 2d6 bludgeoning damage. These roots can do things like pull levers, reach items, open doors, and many more things. These roots can also be used while you're in your wild shape or using your tree shape ability. While these roots are active, however, you are weak to fire damage, and take 1 extra damage die from any fire attacks that are made against you. These roots grow to a length of 25 feet at 10th level and 35 feet at 14th level. This ability can be really fun and can be used in a lot of creative ways. That's why I love it so much. You are basically a wooden octopus, a weapon of nature. I just imagine swinging with these roots, pulling levers, grabbing things, and just general tomfoolery. As you can tell, I'm a huge fan of this class feature. Up next is the Dreams of Harmony, which basically uses your Arcane Harmony animals as a flashbang when you wild shape. And you can also use them once per day to add the aspect of your wild shape, making non-flying creatures being able to fly, and flying creatures get advantage on dexterity saving throws. Body of the Tree is the 14th level ability, where you have become one with the tree. You gain the ability to be resurrected from the tree once per year, and you gain a new body made of the tree over the course of a month. Your current body will turn to roots and grow into the ground, Once a month has passed, you will come out of the springs near the base of the millennial tree. You have only basic clothing, the one item you're choosing of your inventory when you die, which is magically teleported to the tree when you die. If someone wishes to get the item before you resurface, they would have to get your soul's permission, and when you are revived, you are returned to the age of your choice within 10 years of your current age. You can also save an ally by allowing them to use this ability, but you have a hard limit on how many times you can be revived. As well, you gain wooden horns like Millennial Tree Cookie, and you gain a +5 to nature checks thanks to your connection with the tree. You can now cast Speak with Animals and Speak with Plants without using a spell slot as well. Up next is the Fighter class, and for the longest time, I didn't have a subclass for this. That was until the Dark Cacao update came out, and I gained interest in the warrior culture of the kingdom and the Watchers, so I made the Watcher subclass. At 3rd level, you gain the bonus proficiencies and the For the Innocent abilities. You can choose between the following skills: Survival, Athletics, Investigation, or Nature. Alternatively, you may learn one cantrip from the Druid or Wizard spell list. You also now have 2 uses of your Action Surge ability per long or short rest, and only 1 use of Action Surge per turn in combat. Doing so will make it so that your movement speed will become 0 until your next turn, however. At 17th level, you have 3 usage of Action Surge. If you see an ally within 30 feet of you take damage from a melee attack, you may use your Action Surge as a reaction to rush over and do a melee weapon attack, or stay put and do a ranged weapon attack. You do not provoke opportunity attacks while using this ability. The next ability, For the Kind-Hearted, has to do with the community aspect of the Watchers, giving you proficiency or expertise in the Persuasion skill, and you can focus on those you have helped or who have helped you for an action, and a bonus action to get a +3 to your next attack roll. The next is the Forsaken ability. You learn another fighting style, and it doesn't overlap with the one you picked at 1st level. As I'm writing this, I'm realizing how simple it is to describe a fighter subclass. Up next, at 15th level, you gain the For Honor and For Spirit ability. Once per long rest you fall at 0 hit points, you may stand back up at 1 HP. If you wish to do this again before you take a long rest, you must use one of your Action Surges to activate this ability. Lastly is the For the Fallen ability, which gives you a pretty good boost in power. Through your lessons you have learned and the powers you have reached, you have truly surpassed your fellow Watchers. You gain resistance to cold and necrotic damage, as well as your homeland's expertise has truly been brought forward. You gain a 3rd fighting style, again not overlapping with your previous styles. Your focus ability from the For the Kind-Hearted feature is now a +6, and acts for all attacks you make that turn. Up next is the Monk subclass, the Way of the Gummy. Jiggle time! This subclass has a lot to do with absorbing damage in your jelly-like body. Imagine Po from Kung Fu Panda as a subclass.
Hello, young lady.
You gain proficiency in the Intimidation and Persuasion skills, as well as you roll for health when you level up. You roll an extra 1d4, and including the level you pick the subclass, and you gain a small gummy aura that glows off your body by a few inches as your meditative power flows forth. This aura is activated using a bonus action, and you gain resistance to bludgeoning and force damage while it is active. When you take bludgeoning or force damage, you will take the damage you took, and on your next attack, you add that damage to your attack. This force will be stored in your body for up to 1 minute, and will be released afterwards through your gummy aura without damaging anyone else. Your gummy aura will last for 1 minute or until you dismiss it as an action. The gummy aura is the color of your choice, so you can flavor your aura like you would a gummy worm. At 6th level, you gain 10 feet to your movement speed, and you gain a 10-foot vertical jump. You also gain 2d4 to your health rolls instead of 1d4. The reason you gain so much health is because you use the subclass effectively, you're going to take damage, which means you're going to need more health to take more damage. Up next is 11th level, which is Gummy Storage, and no, you do not need to rent a storage unit. With this ability, you can use your stored damage in a different way. That way is to cast spells. At 5 damage stored, you can cast 1st level spells, and it goes all the way up to 25. The spells are listed in the PDF if you want to see them there. Then at 17th level, you don't even have to worry about taking the damage you store. You are now immune to bludgeoning and force damage, but they will still add damage to your gummy aura feature. An example is you take 0 damage from an attack that would do 14 bludgeoning damage to you, but all of that 14 damage will be added to your gummy aura storage. You can also cast Good Barrier at will, but using gummy worms instead. Next is the Paladin subclass, the Oath of the Tea Knights. This obviously is based on Tea Knight Cookie, and I thought there should be more than just one Tea Knight. You gain some extra spells for when you reach certain levels, and you gain access to 2 options for your channeled divinity. You gain the ability Stand Together and Protect Them All. Stand Together allows you for a group benefit that for 10 minutes Once you activate this ability, you and your allies have advantage on Constitution and Dexterity saving throws, cannot be frightened, and gain a +2 to your attack rolls if they are within 10 feet of an ally. This acts as more of a boost for your allies, and with the second ability is more for yourself. Protect them all makes it so that you are a wall that they cannot get over. As an action, your movement speed becomes 0, you gain a +4 to your armor class, and when this ability is activated, all enemies within 300 feet of you must make a DC 18 Charisma saving throw, and on a fail, they can only target you for attacks of any kind. They can make another save at the end of their turns, and they can end the effect on a success. You can still attack creatures who come near enough to you, and you can still cast spells. This effect lasts for a minute or until you dismiss it as a bonus action for both of these features. Up next are the auras, starting with the Aura of Tea. You and creatures within 10 feet cannot be surprised or stunned and are immune to any fear aura abilities. This gives you and your allies the ability to feed off your courage. This aura also grows when you reach 18th level. Up next is Specializing in Size, which you gain at 15th level, and it has to do with the lore of the Tea Knights, being that they fought much larger creatures who threaten cookie kind, such as dragons. You have advantage on attack rolls against creatures who are at least one size class larger than you, and at 20th level, you are now an unstoppable form in your armor, gaining the I Shall Never Falter ability. Once per long rest, when you reach 0 hit points or die outright, you instead rise at half of your maximum hit points. Your creature type becomes a construct, as your spirit inhabits your armor. The only way to kill you in that state is to once again reduce you to 0 hit points and cast a 6th level Dispel Magic or a Wish spell. If you're reduced to 0 hit points without the spells, you will stand back up at 1 hit point. Your body stays in this stasis in your armor until you take a long rest, in which your soul returns to your body at 1 hit point. You could also be returned to your normal sooner with a lesser restoration spell or another spell like it. Rules is written though, if your soul is removed and you are not in your armor, this effect will do nothing. Now it's time for the Ranger archetype, which is based on Win Archer Cookie, who comes from many of the Cookie Run games, but the main thing I focused on was Cookie Run Ovenbreak and his lore from that game. Now it is rumored that Win Archer Cookie was born to be the protector of the Millennial Tree by the flapping of the wings of the Sugar Swan. The Child of the Wind subclass is one for people who wish to protect the forest like he does. At 3rd level, you are gifted your powers and thus you are thankful. Working together towards a better future, you can now use nature as a resource. As an action, you can get a d4 to add to your perception or investigation checks that have to do with the flow of wind or smell, and you can do this if you are blind and deafened as well. This lasts for a minute, and you can do this a number of times, equaling your proficiency bonus. This also gets a 10 feet bonus to your walking speed, and you can cast Gust of Wind once per day without using a spell slot. As you can tell, the wind is a heavy aspect of the subclass. This is because the subclass would have been given in lore by the Sugar Swan. At 7th level is where the class really starts to pick up some steam. You now have a flying speed of 30 feet and can hover at will, being carried by the wind. You also gain wind essences, equaling your level in this class. When you attack, you can expend one of your wind essences to deal 1d6 force damage to the attack. You can choose to add the wind essence after an attack roll, but before it is declared a hit or not. You can choose to add more than 1 wind essence in a single attack. Example, you can attack a creature and use 3 wind essences to add 3d6 force damage to your attack. The wind essence is recharged after a short rest, and this can really boost your damage over time, but can also be used to deal big damage in one blow if need be, depending on your situation. Then at 11th level, you get a bit more powerful. You can now see through the wind and ground, almost like a reflex you grew as you were connected with the earth and ground. You now have blind sight out to 30 feet as long as there is air in said area, and you have tremor sense out to 60 feet as long as part of your body is touching a solid object, an example being the ground, a wall, or a tree. You may extend these visions by 5 feet for 1 minute by expending a wind essence. This allows you for an amazing amount of area awareness, and you can find traps and hidden creatures. You'd be doing things like Toph from Avatar The Last Airbender, feeling for vibrations in the ground to know where enemies are, even through walls. Lastly, at 15th level, you gained Winds Chosen, which amps up your powers in a healthy way. You can now cast Speak with Animals at will, and you can cast Fly and control winds once a day without using a spell slot. You may now use your Wind Essences to heal your allies within 60 feet of you, healing them 2d6 health points per essence spent. Up next is Sorcerer, and I decided to go with one of the magical children we see in Cookie Run, that is, those chosen by the elements, specifically the Frost Children. Specific cookies were chosen to become Frost Children, faded to dissolve in the snow and become one with the white terrain, but also that only those with a genuine willingness in their hearts are appointed. These frost children are infused with magical powers specializing in ice and frost, and goes into their subclass. At first level, you do gain some extra spells, and the Ever Cold class feature. Ever Cold gives you some minor cold abilities, things you touch gain a small frost, drinks you can hold become chilled within seconds, and enclosed rooms with you tend to get near freezing over the course of an hour. You also gain the Frostbite and Ray of Frost cantrips if you do not have them already, and you also gain advantage on tracking something if it is in snow and ice. At 6th level, you gain the Specializing in Ice class feature, which adds some specialization to this class. You can now change the damage type of your spells to cold damage by using a singular sorcery point per spell slot used. This also works on spells you use your Meta Magic feature on. Example, by using a Specializing in Ice feature, having a singular sorcery point on a Fireball spell that is being twin spelled means that you could change both Fireball's damage to cold typing. I like to flavor this as a DM, maybe making the spells like Fireball, now Ice Ball, do different things. Maybe making it an explosion of liquid nitrogen gas, or have it shatter an explosion of ice fragments. However you want to flavor it to allow the spell to make sense with the cold damage variant. Make sure to talk to your DM about it if you want to add some flavor, or you could just change the damage type and not think about it too hard. Unless you're like me, I think too much. Also at 6th level, you gain the Ice Defenses feature, where you gain resistance to cold damage, and you gain advantage against gaining exhaustion levels because you can use your cold now to slow your metabolism. Then at 14th level, you start showing signs of what Sherbert Cookie showed in the game. Your skin becomes paler with a faint blue hue, and your hair turns into a very faint blue or completely white. You are now immune to cold damage. All of your attacks you do with any weapon are counted as magical. As your magical frost grows on the weapons you hold, you can now also create or destroy water once per day without using a spell slot, but the water must be in a frozen medium. It can be an ice block, a structure, or even a snowball. Throw for fun, or for death. Not only that, you can walk through solid ice and snow like you had the incorporeal ability. You can walk through it at half your base speed without having to breathe for 1 minute. You can also choose your own footholds in the ice. That way you can literally walk up a glacier. However, until 18th level, you can only stay in there for a minute without taking damage, but that gets better. Then at 18th level, you gain the Nature's Herald class ability. As far as your level up, you go through a physical transformation over the course of a few hours. After the transformation, you become a Spirit of Nature. You gain a flying speed of 60 feet, you now have immunity to any non-magical attacks, you gain health equaling the damage you took from any cold damage you take. As the cold infuses into your new form, you no longer have to breathe, eat, or sleep, but can do so if desired. With this new form, you no longer age, and you are immune to disease. You can return to your normal form. You will lose many of these new abilities, but you can regain them if you transform again, which takes an entire round of combat. Lastly, your ability to walk through solid ice. You can now stay in the ice for as long as you want. Now for the final class I could come up with, Warlock. I know I could have made a Wizards class with Parfadia, but I decided the Magic Student subclass would be better for some sort of Harry Potter homebrew, rather than a cookie run one.
Harry! I protest! Harry, you put your name in a goblet of fire. No, sir.
Now with Warlocks, you gain access to the Dark Enchantress Patron. This patron has a lot to do with the interaction with your patron, so if you're into that, there's something you can do with your DM to talk about. At first level, you gain some extra spell choices, and the Subject of Chaos class feature. You gain proficiency in the Intimidation and Deception skills if you do not already have them, and gain proficiency in the Spear, Longsword, Quarterstaff, and Scythe, Flavored Glaive. Yes, a Flavored Glaive. There should be an actual scythe weapon in the game without having the homebrew or flavor it. These weapon proficiencies are based on the Cookies of Darkness, actually. At 6th level, you can no longer be magically put to sleep, and you gain resistance to necrotic damage. You also gain the Cake Monster's Grasp Cake class feature. Dark Enchantress has been known to use Cake Monster parts to help her in combat. She cannot always go all out and summon the Cake Witch. She sometimes has to deal with some small fry, even though she might not want to. She's allowed you to have these same powers to help you and give you the excuse if that anyone asks, you are just a Cake Monster specialized druid. Once for a short rest, as an action, you could summon a red velvet arm and hand to aid you in battle. You select an area within 30 feet, and a portal will open, summoning the arm. The arm will act on your initiative count. The arm is 20 feet long and has a 20-foot reach for its attacks, using your spellcasting modifier as its attack bonus. It can do a slam/punch attack, dealing 4d6 bludgeoning damage to the target, and can grapple an opponent on a successful attack. It then can perform a squeeze attack, dealing 4d6 force damage. This hand can also grapple a large creature or smaller, and it can only attack once per turn, meaning you can do a punch attack and then a grapple, but then you must wait until your next turn to do a squeeze attack. This arm has a 16 armor class and 50 hit points, and will stay on the battlefield until 1 minute passes, its health reaches 0, or is dismissed as a bonus action. Then at 10th level, you gain the Brought to Darkness class feature, giving you dark vision, or an expanded one if you already have it. You can also see through magical darkness for 30 feet. You also gain 2 spells of your choice from a list that you can now cast without using a spell slot. Then there's the 14th level ability, allowing you to cast a spell that we will talk about later, Call Upon Chaos. This spell is 9th level, so it's something you wouldn't normally be able to cast without this class feature. You also gain some extra Eldritch invocations. Take a deep breath because now the classes are over. Jesus, that took a while. In the audio recording booth right now, it is over 55 minutes unedited. Now, we will start with backgrounds and feats for your characters. We will start with backgrounds because B's come before F's. Some of the backgrounds and feats are specific to certain races because they cannot physically get said skills or history otherwise. We will go over a few of the backgrounds, and most of them have something to do with the character in Cookie Run lore, like the first background, Fresh from the Oven, which is like a cookie who is stated fresh from the oven. It gives it an exclusive to the cookie race. They are basically a walking newborn with intelligence. With this, you gain proficiency in the investigation and nature skills because you are exploring your environment and nature for learning how to work with the land. You gain proficiency in a set of artisan's tools, and you gain some basic camping supplies. You also get the feature Naive to Others, which makes it so roleplay-wise, people are more likely to help you. Next, we have Spectre Watcher, which is based on Blackberry Cookie, as she is friends with the spooky fellas. Some of the base text reads, some recognize the phrase, I see dead people, and use it as a joke on Halloween. You, however, can actually see ghosts. You have interacted with them on many occasions, and maybe had an adventure or two with them. Some with this background actually have ghosts follow them, and some have them as pets or helpers. With this background, you also gain proficiency in the perception and history skills. The reason for this is that to even find or even realize there are spirits around you, you need to be perceptive. Usually in the environment there are slight changes that show specters are indeed in the area, and you need to be perceptive to find those small changes. History is also needed because to get along with specters, you must also understand them. For that, you must know where they came from and what time they may have come from. To understand the culture and sensibilities of the time, you must have some knowledge of history. You also gain 2 languages of your choice to interact with these spirits. Lastly, we get the detective background, which is of course based off the Delph Cookie himself, Almond Cookie. This background gives you some pretty obvious proficiencies, that being perception and investigation. You also gain 2 languages. The background feature you gain is Ally of the Law, which in short allows you to gain the trust or ire of certain people based on your status as a law enforcement operative. Up next are feats, and this is a fairly small list, only having about 8 feats. I wanted to do more, but with the bonuses from each cookie race and the classes, I felt like giving them to you through feats might make the classes a little less special or individual. So we just have a few that are special themselves or have a hint to the features of previous things. Pomegranate Influence is based off the Warlock subclass, and it has to do with the evil pomegranate syrup that corrupts cookies. Dark Enchantress was corrupted by the syrup, so I thought it might be a good feat. It increases your charisma score, gives you dark vision, you learn a cantrip from the Warlock spell list, you can no longer be poisoned, and you immediately learn the cake language. This feat gives you a bunch of little boosts to your character that I feel like makes it worth taking over another feat or an ability score increase. And the only other feat I'm going to share with you is just a fun one to make, which was the Sandwich Artist Savant. Any sandwich you make can feed a person for a whole day, and it can heal a person once per day for 1 hit point. So if someone is down and you're out of spells or potions, you can just shove a sandwich down their throat. Not only that, you can store your sandwiches in a pocket dimension similar to the wrist pocket spell, except only for sandwiches. Yes, only sandwiches. Before you take this feat, I would suggest you talking to your DM about what is categorized as a sandwich. Like, you can't just put a pipe bomb in between 2 slices of bread and call it a sandwich. You and your DM can argue whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich, so you can be a traveling hot dog vendor if you want, but that's none of my business. After this section of the book, I wrote a small one-off adventure that shouldn't take much more than a session, setting up the Cookie Kingdom and some staple characters, such as having Avocado Cookie as the blacksmith, Custard Cookie III is set as the acting king, with the Court of the Wizard being, of course, Wizard Cookie. You know, having some staples for a kingdom that would be needed to have a basic setting. With this, is a one-shot adventure that can start in 2 locations, escaping from the oven or being sent to save some cookies who are currently being cooked in the oven. Up next would be the magical items, and these are based on things such as treasures and notable items or characters in the Cookie Run verse. The first one I'm going to share is the Bookseller's Monocle. This monocle allows you to cast Identify and detect magic at will, make it so when you cast Identify, you can see through the monocle that you have a HUD like a video game, where things pop up sort of like a menu, showing you what the magic item is and how many charges it has, etc. I think it's a really funny and cool way to use detect magic. Then there is the weaker common magical item, the Bear Jelly Timer. This is a watch that magically keeps the time from the time zone you are currently in, and you can have it set the time for another time zone as a bonus action. You can also set a timer, and you could stop it going off as a bonus action. Yes, it is a simple magical item, but it can be really useful in a survival campaign. It will also tell you what time each day when sunset and sunrise will happen if asked. Up next is the Costume Blanc Scissors. These replica scissors are usually used by Mont Blanc Cookie, or at least the original scissors were, and are now imbued with some of their fashionable magic. Using these scissors on a piece of clothing as an action will make the clothes look like very high class clothing, and the clothes will return to normal after a week. Maybe if you go to Mont Blanc's clothes shop, you might actually be able to keep that style. She will most likely be happy to help. Up next is the Cotton Staff, which is the staff Cotton Cookie uses. This staff makes it so that you always know what direction you're going in and you gain resistance to cold damage. You also always know where you came from if you're like following a trail or whatever. This staff also has 5 charges and it regains 1d4 plus 1 expended charges at dawn. While holding it, you can use an action to expend 1 or more of its charges to cast one of the following spells from it using your spell save DC. That being Featherfall for 1 charge, Goodberry for 1 charge, Aid or Calm Emotions for 2 charge, Aura Vitality for 3 charges, or Greater Restoration for all 5 charges. Next is the very rare magical item that requires attunement by a Warlock, the Dreamcatcher of Trapped Souls. Whenever a creature dies within 30 feet of Dreamcatcher, you may take an action to hold up the Dreamcatcher over your head and say the command word, allowing it to store the soul of the deceased creature. Souls trapped in the Dreamcatcher cannot be revived by an effect that needs soul's willingness to return, like Resurrection, unless you decide to release the said soul yourself. The Dreamcatcher can hold 2d10 plus 10 souls, and you can use said souls to regain spell slots. The Dreamcatcher can consume 5 souls, and by doing so refills one of your Warlock spell slots. You can decide which specific souls you consume and which ones stay stored in the Dreamcatcher. If you consume a powerful soul to restore a spell slot, such as a Lich or a Dragon's, instead of consuming 5 souls, it only consumes a single powerful soul. You would have to talk to your DM about what categorizes as a powerful soul aside from the kind of souls mentioned. Like, I would imagine a strong vampire like Strahd would count as one, but it would be up to your DM if another creature with a strong enough will would count, such as a very strong warrior or a named NPC villain. That could be an argument to be made, but it doesn't mean Jungle Skong, the Werebear Bard, would have a strong enough soul to act as 5 for the Dreamcatcher. Up next, the first artifact of the book, the Grape Jam Choco Blade. The Sword of the Powerful Dark Cacao Cookie. This is a magic sentient greatsword that grants a +3 bonus to attack rolls made with it. It requires an 18 strength score to wield, and it scores a critical hit on an 18, 19, or 20. The sword does 2d10 slashing damage instead of a normal 2d6 for a greatsword, and deals an extra 2d6 lightning damage. The reason for this kind of damage is because the sword is not only huge, it also has horns, which is the closest thing I could find to the term of these things on the center of the sword. It also has integrated magic, and it is large and thick, similar to Guts' blade from Berserk. The sword is also so large it adds to your armor class and other abilities. While wielding the sword, you gain a +2 to your armor class, and you gain resistance to lightning and slashing damage. The reason for this boost in armor class is because the sword kinda also acts as sort of like a tower shield, being so large that it does cover up a large part of your body like a shield does. As said before, this sword is sentient, and it is a lawful neutral alignment. The sword holds the personality that goes by the light of Resolution, or Resolution for short. Resolution cares very much for the people under its command, and people who are under its wielder. This personality is based on the spark of the original wielder, Dark Cacao Cookie. This sword has very high expectations for its wielder, having expectation for them to be heroic and help those who truly need it. This sword will give advice based on its experience in combat, and ruling when needed, but expect its wielder to be majorly self-sufficient, but it's willing to train a wielder to become a great leader if it sees a spark in said person. The thing with said personality, it means that it is sentient enough to choose who it wants to wield it, and will reject a person who does not think it is worthy, dealing damage to said person until the person is either dead or drops the sword. It can be convinced to be wielded for a short time by someone it dislikes or does not fully understand, but that itself is a battle in and of itself. As well, the power of the great weapon forms the most powerful artifact for a cookie to have, that even large countries will fight and die for, the Soul Jam. After a year attuned to the sword, you and the sword will create a new Soul Jam. Your Soul Jam is diamond in shape and is the color of your choice and will flash light when you are in pain. The Soul Jam makes it so that you cannot die in a non-intentional way, such as aging, staying in the age range when you attune to the sword. You could still die by being attacked, but it is much harder to kill you. When you are down to 0 hit points, you can roll a DC 10 Constitution saving throw, and on a pass, you stand back up at 10 hit points. Anytime you go down, however, you start with 1 death save success. The next magical item I will be sharing is the Heart of the Deep Sea. This special gemstone allows you to have special powers while it is on your person. You can breathe underwater, you gain a swimming speed equaling your normal movement speed, and while in water, you gain resistance to lightning damage. Not only that, you can now store lightning damage. When you take lightning damage, you can also choose to store it in the gemstone. It can hold a max of 120 lightning damage, and once it exceeds its amount, it will shatter and lose all magical properties. As an action, you can point the gemstone in front of you, and by saying its command word, fire a beam of thunder damage equaling half of what is stored. This beam is an inch wide and goes out for 60 feet. Once it releases lightning in this way, it cannot store or fire lightning damage again until the next dawn. This is mostly based on the power of Sorbet Shark Cookie, with some added lightning spice to make it more valuable. Next is Hollyberry's Never Dying Cup. I wrote Hooleyberries in the script. Next is Hollyberry's Never Drying Goblet, basically a drunk stream. This item is based on how much Hollyberry Cookie is known to consume fruit juice and having an amazingly high tolerance for it. This goblet makes it so that it fills with a holder's favorite intoxicating beverage. For cookies, it's most often berry juice. This goblet can recreate most any drink as long as it has a monetary cost of less than 5 gold pieces. While drinking from the silver-sized goblet, you have a +2 on persuasion checks, as other creatures gaze at the gem and snowed goblet. While drinking out of this goblet is much harder for you to get intoxicated, with you adding a 1d6 to any constitution saving throw made against becoming intoxicated. If you are intoxicated while drinking out of this goblet, the effects are dimmed. So things like you won't sway as much, the rolls with disadvantage instead gain a smaller debuff of some kind. I personally left it vague because some DMs do intoxication very differently. Up next is what I learned is a fan favorite but also a dev team favorite, Licorice Cookie and his scythe. The thing is a bit harder to describe than most other items, because giving a physical description should have been easy, a licorice core and a handle and blade made from bone, but I cannot figure out where the bone comes from. No one tells me where it comes from. If it was the dragon bone, I would give it some sort of extra damage to dragons, or make it resistant to some dragon types or something, but from what I have, no. I will just be making it so the bones are made from some long-forgotten creature. This scythe requires attunement from a wizard and gives you some pretty good benefits. You gain resistance to necrotic damage, and you are no longer required to sleep, gaining the elf's trance ability. And you could spend that time trance reading or doing some minor magical research. As well, you can cast some spells without using a spell slot once per day. Some of these spells are from the normal spell list, like Crown of Madness and Arms of Hadar. Then there are some from the new spell list later on in this video, specifically one called Summon Licorice Servants. But when you summon servants with the scythe, they gain more HP and you summon an extra servant, like a 2-for-1 meal at McDonald's, or at McGingerbraves, I guess. This was the last magical item added to the list, but not the last magical item I'm going to cover, is the Rainbow Shroomy. This was an extremely fun event in the game, and I got the Shroomy variant for each cookie I had at the time, only missing Dark Cacao Cookie and Cream Puff, both of which I have now. But I wanted to add this item as a magical item. The Rainbow Shroomy is a temporary polymorph, not only changing the physical form, but the personality depending on who eats it. It does what it does in game, making the person a cartoonishly oversimplified version of themselves, or making them just plain strange to look at. It can also turn you into an animal if you have some animal aspects. This effect only lasts for 24 hours, so don't worry too much. If you look up some things from the event, it will give you some idea of what happens after eating one, but I did give a basic example in the text of the PDF, which is also available on Patreon. Next magical item, or in this case weapon, is the Red Velvet Saw, and yes, I called it a saw. I thought it would be a sword, but the game text, it is considered a saw, but it is used like a sword, so I'm categorizing it as a great sword. It was just as confusing to research. When you attack with this blade, the one hit with it must make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw, and on a failed save, they will start taking 4d6 slashing damage at the start of each of their turns because of the cause of a bleeding effect from such a rough cut. They can make the save again at the end of their turn to try to stop the bleeding, and can use their action to hold pressure on the wound to gain advantage on the roll, and on a pass they will no longer be bleeding. Once you are attuned to this blade, you can no longer be paralyzed, you gain resistance to fire damage, and you are immune to any fear aura effects caused by creatures you are facing. To make reference to how it came from Red Velvet, who is constantly working in the oven, is part beast, and has almost never shown any fear, even when his life was on the line. Did I mention he is my second favorite cookie behind Black Raisin? No? Now I have. Now it's time for the last magical item, the only cursed magical item too, and the one I had a lot of fun making, the Strawberry Jam Sword. Some of you might not know it by its name, but the Strawberry Jam Sword is the sword wielded by Dark Choco Cookie, at least until the end of the 14th chapter of the story mode in Kingdom. It has been known to be one of the most dangerous weapons in the Cookie Run lore under things like soul jams, but it is much less desirable because of its curse. The Strawberry Jam Sword is a magic sentient longsword that grants a +3 bonus to attack rolls made with it, and it scores a critical hit on a 19 or 20. This sword deals an extra 2d6 necrotic damage when it hits, and that damage goes through regardless of resistances. It also requires attunement by a creature of some kind of neutral alignment. While you are attuned to this sword, you are immune to necrotic damage, and gain resistance to lightning damage. While you wield the sword, you gain a +1 to your armor class, and to your initiative bonus. As well, you can cast some spells from the Cookie Run spell list we will talk about after this weapon. Not only is this weapon sentient, it is an evil and corruptive beast, and has many strange powers. The sword doesn't tend to talk much, but when it does, it's usually whispering evil commands or dark secrets, reminding the wielder of their past mistakes. Its efforts are used to wear down the will of the one wielding it, to allow it to take control. When the weapon sees an opening, or if the wielder is in any form of emotional distress, the sword will attempt to take over, activating the Sarvan of Darkness effect of this weapon. The Charisma save DC starts at 10, but can change depending on how heavy the emotional distress is, or how worn down the wielder is. The DC will change depending on the DM's choice, and the circumstances around the save. Heck, the DM can give advantage on the save if someone's actively trying to calm them down if they want. Now we get on to the actual curse. If the user fails a DC Charisma saving throw, look at the curse section, the sword will cover the wielder in a dense black armor. The sword will take a larger form and glow red with magical energy. The creature inside will not feel pain, but that does not mean they will not take damage. The sword will take control of the character, having them act as almost a mindless, bloodthirsty monster. Once taken this form, the creature's AC becomes 22, it has a +10 to all attack rolls made with the sword. While in this form, the creature does not require sleep or food, and will attack anything in sight, beginning with the thing that caused them to have such a high rate of emotional distress. Example is, if someone killed one of the wielder's friends, it will attack the thing that killed said friend first, and then attack anything in its sightline, including things like trees or a beehive or anything else. To get out of this state, once every minute after going into this form, they could try to make the original saving throw again at the same DC they failed it. If there are creatures nearby, they could try to assist a creature in the armor by trying to calm it down. A calm emotion spell or successful persuasion check can lower the DC by 1. Now, I know many players might try to use this to their advantage, and the sword will take advantage of that. The problem is, once the Sarvan of Darkness state activates, the player loses control of the character. The DM takes control. It is a mindless beast, and the time between saves makes it a very dangerous thing to be around. A full minute or 10 rounds in combat, or 10 rounds in between saves. And if you become the target of the rage, you are in immense trouble. So if you choose to fail the save, the beast inside may listen to you and let you use its power, but then it'll take control of everything you do. Now, my favorite thing about this curse is how to remove it. To break the curse on this blade, the creature who attuned to it must first have caused it to be tempted by the sword in the first place, and lay the sword down. If the sword cannot persuade you to keep it for the purpose you originally grabbed it for, it then holds no power over you, thus breaking the curse. So basically the way to break the curse is character development, and I love that in an item, where genuine growth of a character is needed for an item to open up or deactivate. It's a big accomplishment for the character, and I love that. Now, there are some more magical items available, such as Latte Cookie Spoon, Hollyberry Shield, and even a Cookie Cutter, but those are available to you-know-where. Now we move on to Cookie spells. We will start with the Almond Handcuffs, which is a 3rd level spell that Artificers, Wizards, Rangers, and Paladins can use. And also in the PDF for each spell, there is now a list of which class can cast which specific spell. Now Almond Handcuffs is a concentration spell with a range of 30 feet and takes an action to cast. Choose one creature of a size large or smaller that you can see within range to make a dexterity saving throw. If it fails, the target is grappled and prone by you in your handcuffs for the duration. At the end of each of its turns, the target can make a dexterity saving throw, and on success, the spell ends. This is of course based off the Almond Cookie and his handcuffs, and I tried to make it a bit stronger than Hold Person, because they would have to spend the movement to get up after they released and some other small bonuses. Up next is Cheers! A small note about the spell is that I like this cute little official art with sparkling and her cookie to show this spell, and I really like it, so I wanted to show it. It's a real cute. I love Cookie Run's social media presence, honestly. Now, Cheers is a 1st level enchantment that can be casted by Druids, Clerics, Bards, and Rangers. It takes an action to cast, has a range of 30 feet, and lasts for 8 hours. You share a sparkling drink you make with a max of 6 comrades, giving them a bonus throughout the day. After finishing their drink, for the next 8 hours, said target will have advantage on one roll of their choice. They must choose this at the time of drinking, an example being a dexterity saving throw, a death saving throw, an insight check, etc. Then, if you cast it at a higher level than the first, you choose an extra creature to gain the effect. So at 9th level, you can give this bonus up to 14 people. Now it is time for Cursed Lightning, a spell that can be casted at 3rd level by most spellcasting classes, and it can also be cast by being attuned to a few magical items in this list, but specifically the Great Jam Chocolate Blade and the Strawberry Jam Sword. The casting time is 1 action, requires a sword to be casted through as a material that isn't consumed, and has a range of 120 feet, and its duration is instant. You call upon the dark pain inside your heart to rain down as red and black lightning. You summon a dark cloud above the battlefield and slam your sword down into the ground. In a 120-foot line, black and red lightning rain down. Those within 10 feet of the line must make a dexterity saving throw against your spell save DC, and they will take 4d6 lightning damage and 2d6 necrotic damage on a fail, and half as much as on success. This is, of course, based off the ultimate ability of Dark Choco Cookie, where he rains down lightning. At higher levels, the spell will of course do some more damage. I'm sorry if I'm going so fast, but there is a lot of stuff to cover here, and I'm barely through half of the script. Emergency Shield is the next spell, being a 5th level evocation spell that is learned by Artificers, Sorcerers, Wizards, Druids, Clerics, and Bards. This is based on the ability by Strawberry Crepe Cookie, and it takes a reaction to cast and has a range of 30 feet and is instant. You push out magic in an uneven fashion to save yourself and those around you at the last second. You summon a crystal-like shield in a 30-foot radius sphere that can take 1 attack. This attack could do anything from 1 damage to 500. The shield will protect you and those inside. Basically, you are protected, but only once. If a damage effect lasts for more than 1 round, with something like a Moonbeam or Poison Cloud, you will be protected from the first round, but afterwards you will start taking damage. Next is Flash Frost, based on the ultimate ability of Frost Queen Cookie. It is a 4th level spell and can be casted by Druids, Clerics, Paladins, Warlocks, and Rangers. It takes an action to cast and has a range of 80 feet and is instant. And a 20 foot wide by 80 foot long line, ice shoots up below the ground, ready to freeze people whole. Those within range must make a Constitution saving throw, and on a failed saving throw, they will take 16d4 cold damage and are stunned until they pass the saving throw, being able to make it again at the beginning of their turn. They take half damage and are not stunned if they are a success. And honestly just makes me think of that scene from The Incredibles. Freeze. Up next is the spell Herbs of Healing, based on, of course, Herb Cookie. This is an 8th level spell that can only be casted by Druids. It takes an action to cast, has a range of 60 feet, and requires a plant of perfect health which the spell consumes. It is a concentration spell that lasts for at most a minute. Through the care you have given the plants, they too shall return the favor, centering on you, filling a radius of 30 feet. A field of flowers and other plant growth will grow, healing you and those who need it. Creatures of your choice within range will regain 8d12 plus 20 health points, and those who spend their turn inside said area will gain 1d8 health points at the end of their turn. At the end of casting, the area will still have beautiful plant life, but will no longer be magical or heal anyone. Now it is time for one of the 4 9th level spells in this list, and it's based off the ultimate of Squid Ink Cookie. Ink Form Kraken. This is a 9th level spell specifically only for wizards, which you cast on yourself. It takes an action to cast and is a concentration spell. You assume the form of a kraken for the duration. Your game statistics are replaced with the statistics of the chosen creature, though you retain your alignment and intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores. You also retain all of your skill and saving throw proficiencies in addition to gaining to the ones of the creature. If the creature has the same proficiency as you, and if the bonus in its statistics are higher than yours, use the creature's bonus in place of your own. You have a single use of any legendary action of the Kraken stat block. You also completely are made out of black viscous ink, which deals 3d12 poison damage upon contact with a living creature. For your tentacle and bite attacks, they also deal 3d12 poison damage from the ink that covers your body touching and sinking into their skin. Note, the reason this spell is 9th level is something I didn't even know before looking into the Kraken for my own campaigns. The Kraken is CR23. CR23. Now that is on the level of some gods, demons, and endgame bosses in D&D. Like Orcus, he's at CR26, just 3 levels higher, and Zogmuti, the demon queen of fungi, is the same CR as the Kraken. So turning into one with set abilities is a hugely strong spell, which I think makes it fair for it to be a 9th level spell. I was considering having this spell only last for a round, because in-game Squid and Cookie only stays in their big state for a few seconds when activating their ability, but looking into the overall lore of the game, I found that they could stay in their ink form for much longer. So I gave them 1 minute time limit to just keep it balanced. I also considered making more ink form formatted spells, but I feel like if I would do that, I would save that for a Bendy in the Ink Machine homebrew or something, because Squid Ink only goes to the Kraken form and nothing else. Now for the first cantrip, Marshmallow's Charm, based on Kimono Cookie, who isn't actually a cookie. They take a cookie form originally being a marshmallow fox, but the cantrip requires a marshmallow to cast, takes an action, has a touch range, and can be casted by artificers, druids, and rangers. You use the sugary softness of a marshmallow to enhance your features to be more charming. Your skin looks softer, your hair looks more silky and soft, and it makes your complexion look perfect. This little touch-up gives you a +2 to your persuasion checks, and you will unknowingly give off features that others find attractive. If this spell is used more than 5 times in one day, you will instead look more flawed, dirty clothes, skin, pimples, wrinkles, and other blemishes. This will give you a -2 on your persuasion checks. This is to make the spell not be overused, just putting a hard limit on the spell. Because if you just use it constantly on you and your party, they would just gain a constant +2 buff to everybody. Next is a spell called the Might of the Sea, which is based off Sea Fairy Cookie. It's the first level spell that can be cast by clerics, paladins, warlocks, and bards. It takes an action to cast and has a range of 120 feet. Through the power of the waves, the depths of the ocean, and the willpower of the creatures within, you call upon their might to bring a geyser of water from your blade. A thin layer of water encases your blade or your arcane focus, and you choose a creature within range. The creature must make a dexterity saving throw or be launched 10 feet in the air, take 2d6 force damage as the water gushes from below the target in a 5 foot wide by 10 foot tall pillar. On a successful save, they are not launched upwards and will only take half damage. And for each spell slot above the first, you add an extra target and an extra 1d6 of damage. I honestly feel like this is a good spell for an encounter with a lot of enemies spread out. Now it is time for a more dubious spell, and that would be the first level spell, Pomegranate's Visions. Now, this spell is fairly easy to make because we see what the spell can do in the Dark Story mode by Pomegranate Cookie, where she uses the specific spell on Dark Choco Cookie. This spell can only be casted by Warlocks, it takes an action, and lasts for a minute with concentration. You call upon the deepest memories of a person, making them face them once more inside their own head. You choose one target within range, and they must make a charisma saving throw. On a failed save, they are stunned and will take 1d8 psychic damage as flashes of their past haunt them in their mind, and they'll have to fight off those intrusive thoughts. On a success, the creature is not stunned and will only take half damage. At the end of said creature's turn, they can make the save again, and if they fail again, they will take the damage again and stay in the stun condition. On a success, they will break the spell's hold on them, removing the stun condition and only taking half damage. This is basically making someone face their past as a spell, enough to make them stall. Up next is an artificer-only spell called Requiem Beam, a 3rd level spell requiring an action to cast. It has a range of 120 feet and is instant. You'll hold a gemstone forward, focusing all the sin and hate in the area into one singular beam. The beam shoots forward in a 120 foot long line and 5 foot wide beam, and those within 5 feet of the beam must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, they'll take 4d8 necrotic damage and half as much on a success. Those who are hit with this beam must make the Constitution saving throw, and on a fail, they are blinded until the end of their next turn. As you can tell from the spell list thus far, I've tried to give some artificers some more individual spells, so they just don't seem like flavored wizards. I'm a dork, I know. I like artificers, okay? Next few spells are summons. Each of which has a stat block included, summoning things like Raising Crows, Pom-Poms, or Licorice Servants. Ranging from 3rd to 7th level, these spells have a wide range of power. These stats also increase the higher spell level you use to summon them. I managed to make 7 summoning spells, and I think I was able to give them some pizzazz. The next spell is something really cool I wanted to make, and I named the spell True Checkmate, based on the thing that sealed away Dark Enchantress Cookie. It is a 9th level spell that can only be casted by sorcerers and clerics. It takes an action to cast, has a range of 350 feet, and lasts until dispelled, or until its duration is over. As well, it has a material component, a chess piece made of gold encased in adamantine. Now I'm going to warn you now, this is a long spell to explain, so brace yourself. You put someone into an infinite chess game where victory is the only true form of escape. You choose one creature within range, and that creature must make a charisma saving throw, and on a fail, you hold the chess piece up of your choice that is made with gold encased in adamantine and say, checkmate. This person is sent into a pocket dimension that is a near infinite chessboard where they control one piece's sides. They will leave behind a crystal formation that is 20 feet tall and 5 feet wide. They must succeed a DC 35 intelligence saving throw to escape from this pocket dimension and win the 4D chess match. And they will make the saving throw once every 24 hours. Every 100 years of unsuccessful saves, the creature will gain a +1 to all intelligence saving throws until they leave said pocket dimension. This bonus will be raised by another +1 for each 100 years afterwards. They do not age during this time, but they can go insane. They cannot do harm to themselves, nor can they harm the chess pieces. They do not need to eat, sleep, or drink water, but can do so if available to them. Once they beat the saving throw, they will return to the plane they were sealed away from and the place the crystal statue they left behind, breaking out of said statue and destroying it. The person can only be sealed away by the spell once. If they pass the original saving throw, they are not sealed away. As a DM, while trapped, I would not allow a natural 20 to work to escape. It would be a 20 plus the bonus. I can't make it too easy to get out. Now it's time for the legendary spells, based off the legendary cookies, like Pure Vanilla and Hollyberry. First up is a spell called from the final level bonus of the Warlocks subclass, Call Upon Chaos. This is a 9th level spell, takes an action cast, has a range of 10 miles, and requires a gemstone worth 10,000 gold and a drop of witch's blood, which the spell consumes. And this spell lasts for 24 hours. You call upon the powers of the witches along with your own magic to bring forth chaos to the world around you. You summon 3 red velvet raves, 10 cake hounds, and 3 pomegranate beetles in range, all at your command. Instead of said creatures, you can also choose to summon a singular cake witch. For the Warlock subclass, however, you cannot choose to summon the Cake Witch. You can only choose the other creatures. You gain a flying speed equaling your base speed, and you do not provoke opportunity attacks. A large rift in the sky opens up, unleashing red, purple, and white lightning made of raw magic. You can once per hour control where one of these lightning bolts strike, dealing 4d10 lightning damage. For 10 miles from where the spell is cast, the sky turns a darkish purple red for the duration. And during this time, odd effects take hold in this range. While in the range of the spell, clerics cannot call upon their channel divinity, warlocks cannot use their eldritch evocations. Saving throws against any spells you cast are made with disadvantage, and you add your proficiency again to rolls for your magic attacks. While this spell is active, you have no need to sleep, eat, or drink, but you can do if you wish to. You are also immune to spells such as Power Word Kill and Power Word Stun. To end the spell early, you must use an 8th level spell slot to cancel the spell, someone else must cast a 9th level dispel magic or counter spell, or be wished away via a wish spell. If the spell is cancelled in that way, you cannot cast it again for a week. Next is Hollyberry's Protection, a spell I showed off early as a preview on Patreon. This is a 7th level spell that takes a reaction to cast and be casted by sorcerers, wizards, clerics, and bards. It has a range of 30 feet, requires a twig of hollyberries as a material, and is a concentration spell that lasts for a full minute. You call upon Ancient Hero's Shield to protect the innocent and call upon her boisterous personality. You summon a spectral shield being 40 foot tall and 30 foot wide in a heart shape, like hollyberry cookies. The shield has an AC of 25 and has a total of 120 HP and will protect those behind it. The shield can be moved by the caster, and it can even be stood upon. If stood upon, however, the shield's movement becomes 0. To move the shield, it requires an action, but will not interrupt your concentration. The shield will also taunt anyone the caster deems as an opponent, in a loud feminine voice. Those who wish to attack anyone else besides the shield, they must make a DC 24 Charisma saving throw. On a fail, they must move their attack target to the shield if within range. If the shield is not in range, the attack counts as a miss. On a pass, they attack as normal. So if you're just taunting your enemies to attack your shield rather than your allies, and I would say act it up when the shield comes up, like, come on me, big boy, come here, I'm gonna stop you, come here, face the shield, listen to Hollyberry Cookie. Lastly, it's based on Dark Cow Cookie, and is a spell called the Jam Sword Barrage. This is also a spell you can use if you have the Grape Jam Choco Blade. This is a 5th level spell that takes an action to cast. It can be casted by Artificers, Warlocks, and Rangers. The spell targets you, it is instant, and in material you need 1 ounce of pure dark cocoa. You call upon an ancient hero's sword and the sword skill to bring a harsh barrage of blows to a target in quick succession. You choose 1 creature within 30 feet of you and quickly get within range of a melee attack. A great sword made of pure magic forms in your hand and you make 5 attacks against a creature. Each attack gains +4 plus your proficiency plus your spell attack modifier to hit, and each attack will do 2d10 slashing damage and 2d10 lightning damage. After your last attack, you make 1 final swing of the sword downwards towards the ground, making all creatures including yourself within 30 feet make a dexterity saving throw. They will take 4d12 lightning damage on a fail and half as much on a success. After you do this attack, your movement speed is reduced to 0 until the end of your next turn. This spell is pretty strong, but that's also because all the classes that can cast it get the spell at later levels, and only, as far as I'm aware, magic items that are only other ways to get the spell. Now it's time for the bestiary, and I'm going to be showing off a few creatures because there are a bunch of smaller creatures, some with only minor changes between stat blocks. I may show one of one type, but in the PDF there are more of a similar type with some changes. Now let's get to the bestiary. First up is Cakeburus, which is a huge beast with a neutral alignment. It has 3 heads, one of which is goofy and one of which is serious and one of which is conniving. It has an armor class of 15, it has 142 hit points, and has a speed of 40 feet. It has a fairly strong strength and dex, but its wisdom and intelligence are fairly lackluster. It's immune to poison, has a dark vision out to 30 feet, and it can speak cake, but can understand but cannot speak common, and has a challenge rating of 10. It does have a legendary resistance, and it has 3 heads. At the end of its turn, it regrows a head if said head died since its last turn, unless it has taken cold damage since its last turn. The Cakeburus regains 10 hit points for each head regrown this way. It has the Ovenkin ability, which means that the Cakeburus can send back fire damage taken, and send it back to the original caster of using a reaction taking no damage itself. It has keen hearing and smell, and has the All for One ability. This creature can die even if it still has all of its heads, if it normally would die from losing its hit points. So basically, if you attack, focus on one head and attack the body, yeah, you're going to be doing some damage to it. It has multi-attack, it can bite, it can do a tail whip that does fire damage because the tail is made of fire, and it has Hell Breath, which recharges after 3 to 4 rounds. I love the Cakeburus stat block, I was very happy to make it. It's a really cute doggo. Up next are Cakehounds, and there is a fairly large number of Cakehounds that you can find in this PDF. The main one is the Cream Cakehound, which is a tiny beast that is neutral. It has an armor class of 12, has 7 hit points, and has a speed of 20 feet. Its charisma is its highest stat because, come on, look how cute he is. He has the face, he's pettable, he's an adorable little fella. He is immune to being paralyzed, has dark vision out to 30 feet, and can speak cake. It can understand common if trained, but cannot speak it. It has keen hearing and smell, has a nimble escape feature. It can take the disengage or hide action as a bonus action on each of its turns, and it has a simple bite attack. Now, other versions of the Cakehound have different things, like the bite attack can do poison or necrotic damage. The Licorice Cakehound does acid damage through their bite. The Milk Cakehound has a burrowing speed. The Cakehounds are very well versed and very well spread out, so I would suggest looking at the PDF to see more about them. Lastly, we have the world map. Now, I'm going to tell you a few things. Getting a good quality PNG of this was a nightmare. Let alone, I also had no idea where the Cookie Kingdom would be, so I'm just going to place a bunker where I think or theorize it might be based on the things that are found in the games. Wow, the video is now done. Man, that took a while, huh? Thank you for sticking with me during this whole hour-and-a-half long video. I would like to thank my Patreon supporter, Lila/Leo Walker, or Grim. Thank you for supporting me and being there. As well, special thanks to Star, Luna Gutsubi, and Little Raven for spell checking this PDF. And thank you to Neph Artworks on Twitter or the Nephilim Artist on Instagram for the cover art of this PDF. This has been a long time coming, and I have been working hard behind the scenes to make this PDF possible, but it also means now that my next project is over the horizon. So, my Patreons will be voting, but I'll also be taking comments of this video into account. The voting will begin as soon as this video releases on Patreon. We will be voting between the Bugsnax homebrew, having a large bestiary and the Grumpus race, a Persona homebrew with the Persona wielder class and subclasses for the way Personas are summoned, a Sonic the Hedgehog homebrew with a Morbian race, based mainly on the comics, with maybe a rogue subclass for the Freedom Fighters, and lastly there will be an Off by Mortis Ghost homebrew, with a Purifier class and a bestiary of monsters from the game Off. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to support your local game shops, enjoy your adventure, and roll safely. Safe travels!